Well, it seems more and more every week I'm bringing you some kind of breaking news. And breaking news in the last hour, Conservative Shadow Foreign Affairs Minister and Romford MP Andrew Rosindell has defected to Reform UK. Well, Rosindell, who also served as Shadow Home Affairs Minister from 2007 to 2010, ends a lifelong association with the Conservative Party, having been a member since the age of 14. Well, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage said Rosindell's decision was driven by what he described as the Conservative Party's hypocritical stance on the Chagos Islands. The Romford MP becomes the second Member of Parliament to join Reform UK this week, of course, following Robert Jenrick's defection on Thursday. He announced this on X. This evening, with sorrow, I have decided to resign from my position as an opposition shadow minister and as a member of the Conservative and Unionist Party. Since joining the Conservative Party at the age of 14, I have been a loyal and committed supporter of the principles advocated by Margaret Thatcher that have always underpinned my own political beliefs. However, the time has come to put country before party. The failure of the Conservative Party, both when in government and more recently in opposition, to actively hold the government to account on the issue of the Chagosian self-determination and the defence of British sovereignty represents a clear red line for me. Since entering Parliament in 2001, I have consistently argued, both from the backbenches and the front benches, that the right to self-determination of the Chagosian people is sacrosanct and that they alone should decide the future sovereignty of the Chagos Islands. Regrettably, these concerns have fallen on deaf ears. Both the government and the opposition have been complicit in the surrender of this sovereign British territory to a foreign power. This was made abundantly clear by the failure of Conservative peers to vote down the British Indian Ocean Territory Bill at third reading earlier this month, following direction from the top of the party. Sadly, I now believe that the Conservative Party is irreparably bound to the mistakes of previous governments and unwilling to take meaningful accountability for the poor decisions made over so many issues. Moreover, the views and concerns of constituents such as mine in Romford have been consistently ignored for far too long. Following a conversation earlier this evening with Nigel Farage MP, I have therefore agreed to join Reform UK as its seventh Member of Parliament. It is clear to me that Reform UK is now the only political movement that is genuinely willing to fight for the best interests of the United Kingdom. The views and concerns of the majority of the British people must no longer be sidelined. Our country has endured a generation of managed decline. Radical action is now required to reverse the damaging decisions of the past and to forge a new course for Britain, one that firmly places the interests of the British people first. Well, that is quite a message, isn't it?
This interruption is brought to you by ExpressVPN and their New Year deal. New Year, new VPN. And a huge saving of up to 80% if you act now. You're busy planning how to get in shape, but the hackers are planning how to get into your accounts. ExpressVPN locks down your connection so you can start the year protecting your data. So scan the QR code or click the link in the description now.
Let's get the thoughts of my panel. Former Tory MP Anna Firth, who is chomping at the bit here. Can't wait to hear what you think. Pub landlord, activist and GB News superstar Adam Brooks is here, and Labour councillor for Waltham Forest, Sebastian Salig. Welcome all. Well, Anna, I have to start with you.
Well, thank you.
Former colleague of yours.
Absolutely. An Essex MP, and I am really disappointed to hear this news. I was talking to Andrew, on WhatsApp only yesterday. And it's always really sad when a colleague defects like this, but I think he's making a big mistake, and I really find it very, very surprising. I know he's close to Jenrick, but Andrew Rosindell is a devout Thatcherite. His association office is called Margaret Thatcher House. He's joining a party that could not be less Thatcherite. There is no way Mrs Thatcher would ever condone Nigel Farage's admiration for Putin. There's no way she'd have any truck with a party that has £140 billion of spending in their manifesto, that has no plan to get spending down, in fact has plans to put spending up, and basically is another control and command party. So I'm really surprised that he's joining Reform, given that. He's cited the Chagos Islands. Now, I'm not in Parliament any longer. I'm not as close to this as I would have been. But my understanding is we've been fighting these Chagos proposals tooth and nail, including winning 4 votes in the Lords. So for me, that doesn't add up at all.
Well, I do understand what he's saying about the Lords and the mess that happened in the House of Lords following that reading. There was an opportunity to have a kill motion, and it wasn't taken. Now, there's people pointing to there being chaos in the House of Lords, which I don't think that really supports the case for the Lords very much. When I watched the video of that debate, it was pretty shambolic, I have to say. But Sebastian, how are you going to feel in Labour over there about all these defections? Maybe just putting aside, of course, I'm sure Labour's happy that the right is fighting over itself. I can see that. Putting aside that for a second, what is the view on the left, at least, or the centre-left, about the Conservative Party? Do you think it's dead?
I personally don't, and I think this is one of my more contrarian views. I think we're massively underpricing the Tories. Of course, the near-term threat for Labour is reform. You have to be live to that. But there's a broad trend that the longer anything has existed for, the longer it will continue to exist. And this is just a natural part, I think, for the Tories of the cycle. You come out of a bruising election defeat after many years in power, you lick your wounds, you reinvent yourself, you start again. And if there's one thing the Tories are really good at, it's reinventing themselves. So I'm sure they'll be back. And the question for people like Rosindell, people like Jenrick is, what does this mean for your career? They both talk about putting country before party. And I just don't buy it, especially with Jenrick. It is the short-term move that gets you the job the soonest, because if somebody is going to come into government after Labour, it's probably going to be Reform and not the Tories. Yeah,
Adam, this is going to be welcome news to a lot of his constituents, though. When you look at the polling in his area, that's heavily leaning into Reform UK. It looks like if there were council elections, they would go Reform in quite a turquoise wave, so to speak. Andrew Rosindell, who I know, by the way, and I have to declare this, I do know Andrew. He's a very, very lovely man. He's very patriotic. He is the kind of person that Reform would want. He's also not a massive ego, which would be probably quite welcome news for Reform, because they have got quite a lot of egos in the party. He won't be one of those people sort of brushing shoulders, will he?
I've got a lot of friends in the Romford area, and he's very highly regarded, to be fair. He cares about his area and he cares about his constituents. And you said earlier that you feel he's made a mistake. I think this is the best move that he could make, because no one I know, and I speak to a hell of a lot of people day in, day out, will vote Conservative. The Uni Party is dead to them, and it's all on trust. There's no way you're going to get that trust back. Doesn't matter how powerful Kemi speaks in PMQs, they're done, as far as I'm concerned, with the people I talk to. One thing about Andrew, he's had strong criticism of immigration over the years. He's certainly right of the Conservative Party. He called for deportation of illegal immigrants. He argued that we should sharply reduce legal migration. He said that immigrants should have to speak English. For me, he's saying all the right things, in his actions over the last 2 years or so, that I've sort of followed what he's done, back that up. I think he lends to Reform perfectly. I backed the move for Jenrick. I did not back Nadeem Zahari. I think that's a strange one, and I think that's a mistake. But I think Andrew Rosindell is going to be an asset to Reform, and as you say, his constituents love him. So it's a bonus.
Anna, there's a concern here, and I've been speaking to Tories since Jenrick's defection. A lot of them message me, and I've got friends in the Conservative Party, and I asked them, what does this mean? Because a lot of the people that I speak to, particularly on the right of the party, were holding out that Kemi Badenoch was going to be gone on May the 7th and they'd have Jenrick installed as party leader. What does this say about the future of the Conservative Party? You've now lost someone like Andrew Rosindell, a quiet MP. He's not well known throughout the country, let's be real. He's a quiet guy. Most people wouldn't know who he is. But that's the sort of Tories you want to be able to keep in the party.
Look, I think the question is, what does this say about the Reform Party? You know, Nigel Farage is always saying that we're not like the Tories, we're a new party, we're going to be different, and yet all he's doing is attracting, mostly discredited, failed Tories. Now, not going to put Andrew Rosindell in that bracket because he is a nice guy. I think he's very misguided on this. But it's extremely odd to me to say Britain is broken, which is the Farage mantra, and yet the very people you are recruiting, because you say you haven't got the experience to govern, are the people who you apparently say broke Britain.
Do you think
that
Britain's
does
broken?
not make sense.
Do you think Britain's broken?
I do not think Britain is broken.
I do. I really do.
And do you know why?
And even if it's a political line, which I totally understand what you're saying, it's Reform have managed to take that mantra on, and I get that. Separately from politics, when I look at the state of the country, when I look at all the problems we have, I think the admission that Britain is broken is the first step in being able to fix it. It's almost like saying, your car might have one wheel and go, it's not broken.
No,
it
Alex,
just needs a bit of tweaking.
Alex, because I think we have huge challenges. Absolutely. I think this government is completely broken. I think this government has been an absolute disaster. I think there is an argument, some people would say politics, and certainly trust in politics is broken. That is a very different thing from saying that our great country is broken. Let me give you one fact.
Sure.
Over the 14 years that the Tories were in power, we went from having some of the worst results in literacy, in science and in maths, in the OECD, in their PISA tests, to having the best readers in the Western world.
That was the best thing the Conservative government achieved. When I look back on its 14 years, education was a sterling part of the work.
But it wasn't the only thing we achieved.
I think it was the best thing you did.
I agree with that. I'm happy to agree with that. But we are, and I think it's so important for young people who are going out into the workplace now to believe in this country. And if we all run it down, and if we all keep saying Britain is broken, you are going to have a whole load of young people who are going to be depressed. And that'll be on you.
The problem with that question is that it's subjective. The word broken means something different to all of us, and so it's impossible to answer. The easier question is, do we need to reform the system or do we need to burn it down? And ironically, Reform is advocating, I think, for ripping down the system, and that's where I start to disagree with that party.
There's only one party that's going to leave the ECHR, and that is Reform. The Conservative wets would never... Look, your party, no disrespect, your party is full of
policy.
people.
You can only stand...
that will not leave the ECHR.
No, it's going to be...
Every MP that is joining Reform is signing up to leaving the ECHR. So if they get in, we leave.
I don't know if you heard the party chairman on this channel this morning saying that the only people who'll be able to stand for the Conservatives at the next general election will be people who've signed up to saying they will leave the ECHR.
The Conservatives flooded this country with millions of people, and millions that have not integrated, millions that are not working, millions that are now signing on. The Conservatives lied to us. I was a Conservative voter till 2019, and I'm embarrassed so. But the only silver lining is that I would never vote for Labour. So now I've got the choice of change. And that is what people out there want. They want something different. If Reform mess up,
Adam, what do you think?
Can I ask you this, and then I'll come back over to you, Sebastian, because I think there's some questions for the Labour Party about this too, because we're going to get a Labour defection on Tuesday to the Reform Party, so I want to talk about that. But what does it say when the polls have clearly quite shifted, particularly for the right of politics, when you do speak to the right of British, right-minded people, I would say, and working-class people who voted for the Conservative Party, which I think they did with Boris Johnson.
Absolutely.
The Tories lost that vote again. So you had it for a short period of time, and then obviously you lost it. How do you think you're going to be able to regain, your party's going to be able to regain that trust back with Kemi Badenoch, who was obviously a minister in the government?
Yeah, because Kemi Badenoch is the only person who is serious about controlling public spending. She's the only one who's going to go into the next general election with a proper plan on the economy, to actually reduce taxes. You know, Kemi's plan to reduce stamp duty is going to take a massive barrier, a massive hurdle away from young people. There are no such plans coming from Reform, none whatsoever. And what I would say to you, Adam, is what do you think is the biggest problem that's going to face this country come the next election.
Immigration.
Right. Well, I'd say you're wrong on that. I agree with you it's a problem. I agree with you it's a problem. I know, but the reality is, Adam, it's going to be the economy, the level of debt that our country is in. And I'm sorry, Sebastian, but your party is running up the debt and increasing the debt.
A very quick final word from you on this. Labour's going to have a defection next week. Bad news for Labour working class people. You're losing them too?
I think irrelevant, really. The two names that have been touted, neither of them are still MPs. Both of them were Brexiteers. Neither of them will be particularly surprising. So I don't think it's going to be a massive wound to the Labour Party, whoever it is.
Well, I mean, Andrew defecting just confirms what we all know, right? The Conservative Party, especially in London, is finished. They're serious MPs who believe in borders, law and order, and national sovereignty are just leaving. Because reform is where that fight is now.
There's been quite... I mean, so London, we haven't seen as many defections. Reform UK's vote share in London is not the same as it is, let's just say, across rural parts of the country. Are you hoping now that with a London MP coming on to your team that might change a little bit, Layla?
Yeah, I mean, we are polling quite well where Andrew is, I think, quite significantly well. And in those outer boroughs, we're doing very well. But... yeah, I am, because so Andrew's defection really is symbolic of how utterly collapsed the Tory presence is in London. I mean, they only have 9 out of 75 seats, and every single one of them is going to go to us.
Why do you think it is? Why do you think the Tories poll badly in London? And what's different about Reform UK that will entice those voters who aren't voting Conservative?
I think the people I speak to, they feel that the Conservative Party, just like the rest of the country, Londoners feel it the same. They feel when borders are broken. Don't forget, London has the highest amount of asylum seekers in hotels than anywhere else in the country. We've just had a murder. London doesn't have any police. They did decimate law and order nationally, and that did have a massive effect on London more than the rest of the country. And, nobody owns a home in London. Yet the Tories looked young people in the face and said, we're the party of home ownership. And they didn't build half enough. And they let millions of people in and didn't even build a fraction of what was needed. So Londoners really feel the disappointment. They really feel the disappointment in the Conservatives. And they recognise that they don't want a party that speaks at them. They want a party that speaks for them. And I think that's where we're at. And again, I'm going to say this, that starts on May 7th. So this is just the beginning of the tsunami, I think, that's going to happen on May 7th. And that's why when I say it's just Carnby Cunningham for the mayor, I mean it, because the Tories, they're no longer in the race for London.
Layla, let's talk about defections in general. There's been a trickle over the last week. I was speaking to Danny Kruger just a couple of days ago about a Green councillor that's come over to Reform UK. Are you at all concerned that you could build this broad church that I think personally has really hurt the Conservatives? They couldn't get things like Brexit agreed amongst the party. Lots of things really tripped up that party because it was such a broad church. Is there not a concern that you're going to rebuild that same broad church with just under a different brand?
No, I think there's one major difference between us and the Conservatives and the Greens and Labour, is that we have extremely strong leader who really has strong convictions, unwavering convictions. And that's something that the Conservatives have not had in a very long time. We have a leader that actually believes in the country and believes in the country's sovereignty, believes in prioritising British people. And I think that's something that the party hasn't had in a long time. And I can guarantee you, Alex, if people who defect do not follow that kind of conviction and leadership, there will be no place for them in the party. And let's face it, Kemi just said yesterday or the day before that she was confident there were, what was it, did she say 100% confident that there'd be no more senior defections? And within days, we have a shadow minister. So it just tells you that those that are defecting are very aware that Nigel is unwavering in his convictions. And I don't think they've had that kind of leadership. So the broad church was allowed to almost pollute the real conservatism with a small c in the Conservative Party.
Kemi Badenoch said that Reform is a party of liars the other day in a conference. She points to Jenrick and his comments, of course, about the Conservative Party post his defection, of course. How do you challenge things like that? Because they're saying, you know, Jenrick wasn't honest about his defection. There's now accusations coming from other Tories about Andrew not being honest about defecting. Would you perhaps not get concerned that accusation that you're full of MPs that tell tales might, you know, stain your party?
I mean, the nature of defections is that they're secrets. I mean, if I'm moving job, I'm not going to tell my boss, you know, I'm leaving. I'm interviewing for other jobs. It's just the way things are done. It doesn't mean they're liars. It means that they don't want to tell the other person until the deal is done. And wasn't it her that was like goading people on the WhatsApp group to resign for Boris when Boris resigned? It was her. I saw, go on, do it. She was like a little bully on that WhatsApp group. So it's pretty rich coming from her. And talking about lying, you know, I mean, I'm not even going to say the lies that the Tory Party that she's leading have told us. They keep looking us in the eye and saying that they're the only ones that can be trusted to fix what they broke. To me, that's lying. They don't admit, you know, he was courageous, Jenrick. And I think the sentence that really drove it home for me was when he said they are so compromised that they can no longer speak for the people. And I think that was very well put. And I think that's how the country feels.
Yeah, that's a similar sentiment here, looking at Andrew Rosindell's tweet as well. He said, well, he's accused the Conservative Party as well of selling out the Chagos Islands. Would your party rip up that deal? This clearly is a big part of what Andrew Rosindell has defected over. He said the issue of Chagos self-determination and British sovereignty represents a clear red line for me. He said that following direction from the top of the party, Conservative peers didn't vote down the bill that sold out Chagos. Would Reform rip up this bill if they got into office?
100%. I mean, not only are we giving over British sovereignty to basically China in a roundabout way, but we're also paying billions of pounds that we don't have for it. So, yeah, for me, I wonder, how can a government undermine its country so badly for no reason whatsoever? So it would rip it up, yes.
Well, I think Andrew will be pleased to hear that. Layla Cunningham, Reform UK's London mayoral candidate, thank you very much for joining me on the show this evening to give you a live reaction to, of course, another defection this week. Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Layla.